Oh, hello, hello. Goedemiddag. Welcome everyone to the TU Delft Library second installments of SHErobots. How many people were here last night? I see a few people. Yeah, okay, cool. So we have more SHErobots, more and more. And my name is Vincent Salucci. I'm a program maker and exhibition maker at the library. We do lots of fun and inspiring events, so please follow us. I also want to welcome the live streamers, particularly the ones joining us from down under, because our guests are researchers from Australia. So thank everyone that's tuning in tonight, Australia time. And for those of you here, please make sure to have a sandwich and fruit and snack with the compliments of the library. And we have an exciting planting demo. The robot has survived the night in the library. I don't think he got into too much trouble. I didn't hear too many stories. But yesterday, we had a wonderful performance with Lian and the robot with some lipstick. And today, the robot, or she, will be gardening. So this is we can talk about this a little bit more. Just to formally introduce the researchers again, Lian Loke is an associate professor in interaction design at the University of Sydney School of Architecture, Design and Planning. Lian's research is the multidisciplinary field of human-computer interaction studies and the interaction of humans and machines through a choreographic and soma-aesthetic lens, exploring how to design embodied and movement-based interactions and experiences with emergent technologies that support human agency, creative expression, skill, and vitality. Dagmar Reinhardt is a practicing architect, researcher, and educator. Reinhardt leads the robotics research group as an associate professor at the School of Architecture, Design, and Planning, also at the University of Sydney. Reinhardt's research focuses on human-centric design at the nexus of acoustics, robots, and accessibility, with recent research projects exploring the range of human-robotic collaboration. And last but certainly not least, Deborah Turnbull Tillman is a curator specializing in design, technology, and new media, an editor and author as well. Deb specializes in disruption and experiential learning regarding curatorial process and the reflection and acting vein of Donald Schoen. She is creative director of the New Media Curation Platform and is a lecturer of the Media Arts and Curatorial at the University of New South Wales School of Art and Design in the Faculty of Art, Design, and Architecture. So we have a pretty exciting agenda today. We're going to start off talking a little bit about the research behind some of the pieces that are exhibited in the exhibition and some of the creative research practices of the SHErobots network and platform. And then we're going to transition a little bit into the demos. So hope you enjoy. With that, I turn it over to our speakers.
Thank you, Vincent. Round of applause for Vincent. I know. Okay, so welcome everybody. Thank you again for coming, especially to those that came last night. My name's Deb, this is Lian and Dagmar, and what we wanted to do is present the first SHErobots Café to you. So when we were talking about doing a public program linked into all of our practices, I asked Vincent if we could do one that's centered around education, especially because the library is such a space of education, of study, all the programs that happen here, all of the different spaces where people can learn from. I've seen a lot of teaching going on, even though there's not formal teaching spaces. So he kindly allowed me to hijack the public program for our first UNSW Art Design Education Forum for 2024. Typically when we have these forums, we're trying to tackle issues in the classroom. But in listening to the talks last night and some of the themes that are coming out and the questions coming from the audiences, I thought there was a lot of crossover. So I'm sure that you're experiencing it here well. Charlotte, maybe you could comment on it as well, but there's a lot of concern and worry around AI, around ChatGPT, around the way that we teach, the way that we assess these things, the way that we deal with them in terms of plagiarism. And I think that we had a lot of common themes across the exhibition. So like who are people, who are robots, what are people, what are robots, what are their capabilities, what are they here for, what are we all here for? So I thought we could kind of bring it all together and have a nice discussion. So because we've been allowed to hijack, I wanted to acknowledge that these teaching and learning tools are typically used on the lands of the Bidjigal and Gadigal lands of the Eora Nation in Sydney, and welcome elders past and present. There's a seat at the table for all, which is also a common theme in the exhibition. So, those things aside, let's talk about SHErobots. So there are a couple of other practitioners in the room that are in the exhibition, and I would like to invite them to come up as well. Muga, Belek, could you come up? And Charlotte Firth, could you come up? Oh, no, where's your chair?
You can sit.
No, you need a chair too.
You can sit or just.
We can share. Can we make a bench?
Move this around. You sit there. I can sit here. That's great.
So one of the most important themes for me as a practicing curator, and that teaches from the vein of practice-led research, which means you do the thing, you reflect on the thing, you write about the thing, then you teach about the thing, then you assess about the thing. And it's called iterative cycling. Donald Schoen talks about it a lot in his 1984 text, The Reflective Practitioner, and it's a base of a lot of my own research when it comes to curatorial practice. So the first thing that I had to talk about was personal stakes. So what are our personal stakes in the show? And what I wanted to prompt you with, in thinking of from a teaching lens, what I wanted to prompt you with is that we're at the intersection of art and technology. We're often reliant on our male counterparts, which we've talked about a little bit. And one of the things that sticks with me having, young kids and a partner is even being able to leave the house on a regular basis. You have to organize all sorts of things. So how do we disrupt this? How do we involve all genders? How do you make it so that this is a constant kind of thing? And I thought people could just talk a little bit about their personal stake in this kind of theme of what it means to you to kind of be female and how it links to your work and your teaching. Who wants to go first? Oh, is your mic on? On the bottom? Oh, it's
working.
Yeah.
I just have to hold it like a singer. I guess for me, the stake is about inspiring people. So, as part of being a female researcher, I'm also a culturally and linguistically diverse researcher as well in the context of Australia. So I moved from Turkey. So I feel myself as a role model for those who also travel the world and be part of a nomad lifestyle in a way, and inspire them in such ways that you can do it. It's not about. It's really about who you engage with and how you support one another. And I think that's the stake for me in SHErobots. When Dagmar first invited us to be part of the SHErobots exhibition and getting to know you all and being part of this community, it's really important. And I think we need to be able to create these mentoring opportunities and supportive mechanisms to be able to allow us to expand and reach out to more people. So in the first round of SHErobots, it was just our research group and a project that I was leading. This time I also brought my PhD student, so her work is also being exhibited, Şebnem Lütfiyan's. And I think it's a growing community and we can do more. So when it comes to teaching, I do similar things. So I'm part of, for example, a program called Aspire at QUT, which helps indigenous students female students to engage with technology.
Yeah.
So we meet with them every fortnight. It's not part of my workload. It's just like a mentoring possibility. So I give them small projects, and we get to spend time on a one-on-one basis. It's a very different model than most of the mentoring programs or STEM programs.
Yeah.
So that they can learn from us and they test different disciplines as well. So it's not just architecture. One term they are with us, one term they are with another school in our faculty, and they they get to experience and they get to meet people, female researchers like us, so that they can
That's
become
fantastic.
one. So it was a bit of a longer response to
No,
your
no, that's
question.
okay. And that was the Inspire program?
Aspire program.
Inspire program. And do you find that there's a lot of reciprocity in terms of learning off of each other? Like, I know there's a trend
Oh,
in art and
definitely.
design in Sydney that we are learning a lot of our Indigenous counterparts who, and it's almost like a return to an Indigenous way of being, like the work of Angie Abdullah, and a different way to kind of organize the hierarchy of things, which
Yeah.
is, I was talking to Jilly Ron last night, who is another amazing practitioner, and she said, you know, it's not really about feminism, it's kind of about creating a space for the other.
Yeah.
And I think that that was a really beautiful way to say, let's disrupt things, let's shake things
Yeah.
up. And if we can manage that in our teaching as well, then that makes me really happy.
Definitely.
Thank you.
No worries. I think Charlotte will have something to add. She's running a very multidisciplinary.
Yeah, Charlotte, what's your personal stake in this? Or professional, personal, professional. Personal is political.
I think kind of following on from that, and again, it's representation for me. I think coming from the built environment, which is typically a very like male-dominated industry, and even in my past career working in architecture, when I said I wanted to move into robotic fabrication, a lot of people had a lot of questions and weren't necessarily supportive of that. So I think, again, I worked as a technical officer in our workshop, and when I first started there, we only had 2 female technicians in the whole workspace, and I think now that's really starting to change, and I think just being there and being in that space and working with the equipment and showing people, you know, other females that you can do this, I think is a really important thing. And again, it's for me coming here, being able to do this, and also as an early career academic being here and being mentored by you guys, I think, you know, has been a really great experience. And I feel like you guys are also like uplifting my career in that, which is a really nice thing. So it's building a really great community that then, you know, trickles back into teaching, and our students see that and they see how we're supporting each other through our careers and the work that we're doing. Yeah, and then in terms of teaching, my main focus is about accessibility. So we've just introduced a robotic fabrication minor at the undergraduate level, which is very, very exciting, and I don't think that's really being done in a lot of universities yet. My main focus is how do we offer teaching of robotic fabrication and looking at coding right at the beginning and making that accessible to students, so then if they want to go further and progress into a master's or a PhD or whatever that may be, they have the tools and the resources and that they're supported in doing that. So I think, yeah, that's why I'm here.
Wow, fantastic. I'm swooning. I'm swooning a little bit. And I'm also mindful that Belinda Dunstan, who's a participant in the exhibition, has a fantastic video clip on Instagram that talks about the minor, and that you've also got one coming?
Yes.
Yes. So
My
if
video
you're
is coming too.
coming soon to a phone near you. So please have a look at that, because it explains the minor, and it's one of the first in the world, I believe. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's pretty impactful. Thank you, Charlotte. Ladies, do you want to talk about personal stakes, or do you want to move on to the next theme?
Now I wanted to latch onto the teaching, because I think that's really quite important, because we are talking about feminist perspectives, and I think that actually starts, in a funny way, it starts in childhood. So the girls get the dolls and the guys get the trucks. My sister actually had the Carrera-Bahn, which was super. But so it's like, it doesn't, somehow we are still training up females to, again, coming back to stereotypes, or to take that trajectory. It's not as open out there anymore, but it's still sort of inherent in the equation. And so what we are similarly doing robot electives once every year. We have girls and boys in there. We have people of different skills. So taking teaching as something that's inter-skill based, I think, is really important. So we are setting up our robot electives as something you try to understand the movements of the robot. So we make people go through scenarios where someone is a robot and the other person tries to tell them how to move through certain movements. That gives you a descriptive rule-based scenario, and that can actually be taken into ChatGPT. So that's really quite exciting. So that's one thing. But the other thing that we're doing is we have mixed teams, which is not always taken for granted because girls tend to hover with girls and boys tend to hover with boys. I know it's a bit it's very quite mundane, the problem. But so what we do is you need to have at least one female in there, and if you have just one female, the female is doing the talking, right? So you guys can do the work, but the female is actually representing everything. And we also ask them to do the coding, so not to, because groups of 3 or 4 or 5, girls stand back and say, okay, you do the coding, you're the guy, yeah? And then we set that as a track right from the beginning.
So it's almost like an organizational versus, I don't know where my microphone, oh, there it is.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's
Like an organizational versus like construction type thing.
It's a systemic thing, setting up people with certain tasks that they don't think they would take on in a team constellation. So we expose them right from the start with these challenges, and they actually love that.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, really good. And these are 2 different universities we're talking about as well in terms of like creative research and conveying that creative research to the next gen. So University of Sydney and UNSW are approaching this in different ways, or fairly similar ways, or fairly different ways. And what's QUT doing? Come back in, Muga.
So we are actually just about to start a brand new course on human-robot collaboration, and we named it People with Robots because we think that it's not really a collaboration. Like, does the robot really want to collaborate? No, we just tell him to do stuff. So, so we called it People with Robots, and it's going to be a very big unit, so there will be 700 students per semester because it's for the whole university. So we have students from nursing to creative dance to mechatronics engineers or scientists that will be part of this unit. So in this case, we will be really working in that, let's say, multidisciplinary environment. And there are really prejudices. Like, we don't know if the robotic engineers will come and take this course, or how would the nursing students will respond to it. And some disciplines are really dominated with certain genders, right? So that will be a very interesting combination to see how we'll just topple up everything and
what
shuffle it up.
What year is the course?
It's like a first semester course.
So again, straight from the start, Dagmar.
Straight from the start.
And you're doing first year too, right?
Yes, so the courses that we're running, they're basically open electives, so you can take it at any level. And we're running one coming up T1. It actually started yesterday. So that course, when I looked at through the list, a lot of students who have just started their degree first term are actually taking it.
Yeah. That's great. Congratulations all. Did you want to add anything?
I just wanted to say I'm blown away actually by this younger generation that are really just taking the reins and very competent technically and creatively and really pushing the boundaries of robotics and robotic education. I think it's really impressive, and I think that's part of, I guess with SHErobots too, it's like how do we learn from each other, whether it's between generations, because a couple of us in the older generation here, but still having everyone's got something to offer and learn from. And I see myself more in a sort of mentoring capacity these days and trying to create opportunities for other people or connect people. So less about trying to pursue my own individual pathway, but how can we, and I guess that's part of when we're traveling and we're doing these kinds of events and meeting all these incredible people, that we're also looking to how can we connect people up and foster new kinds of conversations and creative work. So
I think it's also interesting. I think someone made a capitalist comment this morning. Was that you, Dagmar, on the tour? Typically, like 3 different universities would be competing for students, and a platform like SHErobots kind of brings everyone together and is looking at workshopping ideas for like the general need to teach about these technologies instead of competing against each other. And I think that's just a little bit special too. So I wanted to thank you, everyone. I wanted to move on to the next item on my list, which was to kind of talk about some of the Haraway themes about making trouble, which I take as disruption, one of my specializations, making odd or making strange, which I think, Lian, you might have something to say about, unusual collaboration, hot compost piles, These are some of the things that Donna Haraway is speaking to, that we've lifted and tried to translate through and extend with the exhibition. So for me, unusual collaborations or making trouble comes pretty typically easy, like in the courses that I'm teaching, which tend to be third year, because that's when the art and design students are doing their final projects or thinking of moving into postgraduate work. We do like a cycle of disruption, evaluation, reflection, and then trying again. And so this is the way that I teach them to make in the classroom, and we do it in 9-week cycle, like 9-week terms, 3-week cycles for each. And we have assessment at each of those points. So typically that's kind of how I've been teaching. So in terms of the Haraway themes, I would say like kind of the making trouble and unusual collaborations are the two that come out for me the most. Lian, I thought that I would throw to you about making strange. You mentioned last night that you were wanting for years to dance with the robot and to present your robot self. And I think it's really interesting, like this way, like what you bring to the collaboration, because I always think of Dagmar really practically going, I want to do this. Lian, will you do this with me? And you went, yes. And then you went, who will produce? Deb will produce. Yes, okay, let's go, you know. And we just kind of did it. But I often think like we have a shorthand in the way that we deal with each other. And so we all know what we're going to do. But I often think like it's clear to me that Dagmar leads in terms of the architectural focus and materials and things like that. And the crossover to production is about like construction and logistics and making sure all of those things happen. And I actually thought that what you bring to the table is that collaborative and creative expression to cycles of manufacture and making. So it's like, how do we infuse, translate, and then disseminate information about this? And we saw you do it yesterday by dancing with a robot. And I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about that want and how it might factor into your teaching methodologies.
Yeah, I think if I think back, actually go back to my PhD, which I did in, when was it, sort of early 2000s. And to give you some context, I actually have a very technical background. I did electrical engineering, computer science, and maths at university, but actually wanted to be a fashion designer. So I had this sort of creative urge going on for a long time, but never found a way to bring them together until I did my PhD, and then also had a dance practice, so I managed to fuse those in and produce a design methodology of moving and making strange. So this whole idea of making strange, defamiliarizing, was actually really something I just, actually, my supervisor at the time, Tony Robertson, who's an incredible artist and academic, because she was an artist, making strange is something that artists do, and so she sort of turned me onto that. And then also Maxine Sheets-Johnston, who's a dance phenomenologist and theorist, she had a book that used that term in it as well. And it's that thing, you know, when you're doing your PhD and you're formulating it, and then you come across a text that just really speaks to you. Yeah. And that was that text that just went, okay, it's all about moving and making strange. And that has sort of persisted. So in my teaching, when I teach interaction design, whether it's studio-based teaching or other modes, I'm very interested for students to make strange, to find ways to come at things from lateral thinking methodologies. And if I'm using embodied techniques, it could be different ways of engaging with space or perception or materials, but often drawing on artistic and dance techniques for doing that, for looking at things differently. It could be something as simple as inverting yourself. Like, you know, last night I did a shoulder stand in the performance, so that was a way of, completely just changing my body orientation, getting a different perspective on what's going on. So it actually is really core, like making strange is sort of part of my DNA now, that I would bring into any kind of, project or educational setting. And so with the robotic performance, I think putting robot interaction, human-robot interaction, into a performance frame means you can, again, look at it very laterally and creatively. You can take different perspectives on it, like as the performer, am I performing myself? Am I performing some other character? Am I performing the robot or some other aspect that I want to embody? So there's a lot of freedom in that conceptualization, that choreography, to make strange and to sort of bring those relationships or maybe those habits that we have or stereotypes, the thinking how humans and robots should interact and relate, like really sort of open those up and play with them, which I find very exciting. So I think, I could just see a photo of me in there. I'm on the performance. Okay. Because I did that performance. I don't know what it looked like. I haven't seen it from the outside.
Oh, sorry. It's quite a nice
yeah,
picture,
yeah.
so everybody knows.
Just, I think if you're doing a performance, it's then what are those key moments of relationality that you can take from it and go back and then probe more analytically later, or, you know, I could do some writing about it and think of a little bit more deeply about it. But I think for me, performance is making strange.
It's also a way, like another way to understand text, right? So like a performance or an art piece could also be a piece of text that you archive and review and go back and expand and even cite now. We can even cite those kind of creative outputs. Does anybody else want to comment on creative expression?
I want to.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
I don't.
Oh, we're not plugged in.
We're not plugged in. I can show you after. I have a lot.
I think creative practice is in a way provocation, isn't it? It's just triggering these questions. It's more about the questions than the right answers. And I think we tapped into that yesterday in the talk as well. And this morning while we were walking in the exhibition. So as a researcher that's really building on the learnings from that creative practice, I think we call them non-traditional research outputs in Australia. I don't know if there's something.
NTROs.
NTROs. Do you have that kind of acronym here? But it's almost inherent. Like whatever I do, I tend to create an output and share it with the community and provoke these kind of questions. And what else can we do with the robots? It's not just about the precision, but there is more there to question.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Charlotte, do you want to talk a little bit about reprint? Because you do teach that kind of materials reset, and then you've made something of your own.
Yeah.
You don't have to.
No, I'm just thinking. Because, well, in terms of creative expression, in terms of what I teach and do, I feel like the courses and the content that we look at is quite technical.
Yeah.
And then from there, you know, we're teaching them coding, we're teaching them like how to understand how materials behave. And then I guess the creative expression for us and reprint as well is, okay, well, you know, typically when you look at 3D printing, you're focusing on making sure that everything's super accurate normally, that layers are binding together properly, that your layer height is correct, that your wall thickness is correct. And then I push the students, and in reprint, the whole point of reprint is to do the complete opposite of that. And it's looking like, okay, well, what if we over-extrude here? What happens? What if we under-extrude here? And then bringing that back to the technical and being like, okay, well, if we're looking at acoustic panels, like how are we making acoustic treatment by using these methods that typically wouldn't be used in 3D printing? And then, I share that with my students. It's that you don't have to follow the normal conformative way of printing and making everything look perfect. You know what I mean? It's the complete opposite. It's experiment, push the printing to the limit, push everything that you're doing and see what the output is. And in reprint, the actual surface pattern that's happening on there is completely written in Python code, and I didn't know what that pattern was going to be until it printed. So it basically was just pulling numbers and points out of a print and changing values. And then it created that kind of sine wave pattern on its own.
Wow.
So, I guess that's the
cool.
creative expression there, I guess, in a way.
But that's also really interesting in terms of, like, in art history, you take, you know, painters who are painted in the traditional canon, and then they abstract them, or they move those points, the mathematical points, or they try to do things like represent music in paint, and they try to cross over typically all the time. I'm really interested in what you said too about, you know, this is a weird way to use a precision tool. So like you've disrupted it, you've disrupted the typical process, and you've made it strange as well, and in unusual collaborations, right? Where you're doing like a script and a machine and a person, and then bringing it here to disseminate that kind of experiment to the public. It's really cool with your students in between. It's great. Thank you. Dagmar, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, I think these are the exciting times that most people are digital natives now. So we can assume a certain knowledge of some sort of computational language, and so that changes the robot equation, because as you said yesterday, like working with the robot is not the problem. Setting up the robot to through the programming, which takes time and calibration, etc. So that is a problem. But if you have a sensing robot, that suddenly becomes not a problem anymore, because you have a continuous and dynamic data feedback. And so you probably know that saying: if the only thing you have is a hammer, everything is looking like a nail, right? But is that really true? Because you can use a hammer for very many different things. So some of the things that we have been trying also, and some of the electives that we've been doing, is to really make tool palettes and to expose people not to something like you have to have this end result, but it's more like giving them not the brush or the pencil, but to give them the spoon and the drill and the hammer, and to let them interact on materials that might be dynamic. So hammering the egg, hammering an ice block, going through flour, exploring through the relationship, which is like totally unclear, of the tool and the path and the material, what you actually can make. And it's so, I mean, there's some speculative experiences in there, and also some glorious moments of things that suddenly have this beauty of a galaxy, like what we had with the egg. Everything's exploded. It's just beautiful. So, and then you can analytically go into that and start to explore what you can use these processes for and connect them. But it's a sort of different way of thinking through and feeling through both the machine and the material what it is that you can do. And I think that's exciting.
Very. Agree. So I think the next kind of Haraway theme I wanted to bring in, and I think it might segue into the bulbs, the tulip bulbs, and the planting of the bulbs, the she bulbs, are the hot compost piles. So this idea of kind of reorganizing or looking at the ecosystems of the world in terms of care for the world. It can be tending your garden, it can be, I don't know, recycling, it can be, making sure, I don't know, if plugging cars in is better than using fuel, maybe. But I wanted to talk about different ways to kind of engage ecologies that we rely on. And Dagmar, maybe this is a good segue for the demo.
Yeah, okay. Oh God, I love Donna Haraway. Also, it's like with Deleuze. I don't quite understand everything that's being said, but it's sort of like it puts an idea in my brain, and then you can just go and roll with that. Okay, so I really should say the demo. The demo is a collaboration, and it's really a discourse between different people at different moments in the world that are interested in something that's similar. We call it robot seedling. We shared a passion for tools, so a shovel and a rake, which also align very well with the robot habitat in the robot kitchen, and also a very lucky friendship between myself and Professor Henriette Bier in our opportunity to come here. So we've been working with sort of robotic habitats and how you can prepare some ground in a comparison with animals and plants. It's part of what my PhD student Tracy Woods is actually doing. So some of these very beautiful imageries that sit there are taken from a Brisbane former banana plant, and which is being renaturalized, and then you have wildly strange animals like goannas and I've forgotten all the names, but so very large and very small animals that keep these habitats alive and do the nesting, and by doing their movements are digging in seeds. So a lot of things in nature happen accidentally, but again in a network, in an ecological network, and in a relationship. Okay, so long explanation to the background. But so the idea of putting seeds into the ground obviously is also something that's been part of the fame of the Netherlands. And we took the iconographic plant, obviously. And so we we started talking, took the opportunity, and really had some preparatory meetings. And I should actually say, so I'm more like sort of I'm more the talker here in the group, because Mika Prendergast of the Cognitive Robotics Lab was so kind to say, let's play. So this is what we're playing here. And Henriette's PhD student, Arwin Hedig, who's a 3D printer and inventor and designer actually in his own right, and should give more international lectures, I believe, and has been co-working with Charlotte Firth, who's a friend and collaborator on acoustic panels and lots of other things. And we said, why can't you come with us and to get to know each other and do some programming? So really what we want to say is, and then maybe, yeah, what we want to do is grab another sandwich and come here, because it's not a demo. We've been trying some things, right? And some things work and some things don't. So we were hoping to run the simulation of the previous programming for you, because that worked fantastically. And some other bits and pieces will work, yeah, to some extent. But sorry, can I just? Where's the bulb thing? Where's here? So I'm just going to grab something.
What's happening? Oh, there they are.
We're talking about matter, right? So we're talking about materials. So if you have, if we talk about seeds, yeah, let's just give some respect to these animate beings, right? Because these guys, they are still alive. They won't be much longer if we keep them dry, right? But they are. Sometimes we talk in computational design. We talk about wicked problems. I think this woodwork is a very wicked problem in the sense that the geometry it's very complex, and it's very hard to be described. So if the problem is, and again, so I'm super interested in problems, and then normally I'm just running around and ask people like, are you also interested in that problem? And then shall we do something about this problem? Just try what it's going to go to. So this problem here is really, how does the robot recognize these very alive, very different individuals? Yeah. And so what capacities do we have for a robot hand to grip those bulbs? Yeah. And then to plant them into this, admittedly, sand is not very representative, so it just sort of stands for the ground. So how do we bring the bulb into the ground? It's not a very big problem, yeah, but it would be an essential problem if we say that the robot is actually helping us maintain a garden over a larger period of time. So the robot as the interactive interplay. And with that, so description of uninhabitable environment, so replanting. I mean, I had a great time in my Schrebergarten when I went to Amsterdam like years and years ago and just bought like 100 tulip bulbs and just wildly placed them somewhere and people didn't know, and then they were surprised when they started sprouting out. So I think support of vegetation for environments that then support plants and animals and humans in a sort of more equitable relationship is something that's very desirable. Do plant seed bombs if you have the chance, just onto industrial building sites. Anyway, that's just another context. Mika, would you like to say something about the Cognitive Robotics Lab? As an information, because you have a super lab here and there's ample opportunities to collaborate. And then we're hoping that you can maybe talk a bit through the simulation, Arwin, as well. And then you can maybe also say something. Yeah, okay. Excellent.
All right. Hi. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I had the pleasure of supporting the SHErobots crew here and actually having a robot at TU campus that they could use was critical to doing some demos here. They didn't want to bring a KUKA on the long-haul flight from Australia, so I was happy to kind of help them in that way. But yeah, my name is Micah Prendergast, and I'm an assistant professor in cognitive robotics. And we have a nice demo prepared by Armin and Charlotte here. And there, as she was saying, there's actually quite a lot of complexity in this robot running this demo. So having a demo being created from start to finish over the course of really only 3 days, I think you had to build and program all this, is a lot to ask of anyone. And we had some very dedicated PhDs involved. But I think the outcome is quite nice. So I'll let them talk through the demonstration itself. But I want to point out a few things about the robot that they're using. So this is the Kuka Iwa. It is really designed to be used around humans. So this robot is very safe. If it's moving around and it collides with me, it knows that it collided with something it didn't expect, and it has brakes that will kick in and protect you from being hurt by it. So in this regard, this robot is very cutting edge. It's designed to work around humans, and I think that really connects to a lot of the topics that were discussed on, actually robots being in our workspaces and the way we kind of connect to them. So when you're around, and if you come up and are looking at the demo, don't be afraid of the robot. These guys will kind of maybe help you avoid kind of getting in the field of view of the camera and things like this. But you don't need to be worried about the robot. It's not going to reach out and hit you with a shovel. But I'll hand the mic over to these guys and let them kind of walk you through what's going on. So thank you.
Slightly subtle, so just come in and have a look. Trying not to be in front of the camera here.
Okay, so the code has been subdivided into several parts. The first part is the digging code, which there's a robot hand which holds the shovel, which is able to then make the hole for the plant. And this is actually the second time that we're trying this code, so there's no guarantee for success, but it seems to be working more or less. And then there's another part that uses computer vision to detect the position of the bulbs. So as you can see with the red tape on the frame there's this really small camera that is actually videotaping the position of the bulbs. And then color segmentation is used to detect the position of the bulbs. And then the position of the bulbs is then passed on to the robotic arm, and then the robotic arm knows where they are, and it can do the motion towards the bulb. And then at that moment, there's a moment needed for human-robot interaction to help so basically the human needs to help the robotic arm to exactly grab the bulb, which we'll demonstrate in a second. Yeah.
Which part are we doing now?
Are you talking through? I can hold this for you.
Yeah. Sorry, we're planning here live. So basically right now what we need to do, we've dug a little hole here for the bulb to go in, and the robot needs to drop the shovel so that we can then start the second part of the code, in which, using the computer vision, the robot will come over to the bulb over here. Just don't want it to... Don't want it to drop on the floor. Gently does it. So yeah, basically now, relying on the computer vision system, we can come over, and the robot, how we've programmed this is that the robot will come into the relative region of this element, and what the computer vision basically sees is a change in contrast. So it's recognizing that red tape on the table as the boundary of the workspace that we're working in, and then it's looking at all the different colors on the table, and basically we're trying to identify those darker colors, so it understands that it's going to pick up the bulb at the back. I feel like I'm right in the way here.
No, that's perfect. But we should also talk a little bit about the environment. So we've been testing some pre-studies yesterday. And so luckily enough today, there's a sort of clouded sky. So we have an ambient light condition, which works really well. So this is one of the things that could interrupt the vision system. The other one would be, so I'm not going to move them now. I could, but I'm not going to do it. So some of these bulbs don't have the roots with them. Something like this comes, as we have seen yesterday, comes up as this sort of noise. Yeah. So you can either have the problem of the shadow, which disturbs the vision system, or you can have all of this, which makes the plant, yeah, which is the brain of the plant, the root system, as something that is then sort of hindering for the vision. What you also might see is that there's a really nice spacing. All of the bulbs are recognizable separately. If we were working and throwing all the bulbs on a table, there would be intersections, and then the system cannot recognize individual bulbs.
Yep. And I think down the line, like what you would then add to this system is a machine learning algorithm that would come in and start to identify a whole range of images and study them, so that down the line, even if you did have some intersections or crossovers or piles of bulbs at different angles, the vision system could then later on recognize the exact location still, and come in and pick them up.
Yeah. When you've been writing the program for the vision system, can you just briefly explain the vectors?
Vectors, so you mean
For
these
the
lines?
recognition. So
Yeah.
there's something happening on the screen which I think might be important. Are you referring to that explanation then there as well? So if you just turn around, or if we can turn the screen around, so that's literally what the system sees.
So here you see the camera feed, and I've taken a snapshot, and then basically this image is converted into this, which basically only contains 3 colors. And the 3 colors that I've chosen are the average color of the background, the color of the tape, and a dark color, which is the average color of all the bulbs. And that basically means that for every pixel, the color that is closest to one of those 3 colors, that's the color that it's going to become. And this is good because then it basically allows me to cut out these individual shapes, which you can see here. And then there is an algorithm that basically detects the longest side of the object, and it makes a vector in that direction. And that basically means that the robot then knows in which direction the bulb is oriented. So it is able to adjust the robotic arm to pick it up, so that it's picking it up in the, so that the arm is, let's say, picking it up in this direction rather than like this. I think we are ready to run the next part of the code.
Directionality obviously is important because at the end of the day you want to have a very soft grasp on the bulbs themselves, but you also want to know what's top and what's down, because if you're unlucky you have all the bulb ends facing towards the sky, which doesn't really help the plant. So directionality is important in the system.
So in a second, they're going to actually go and try to grab one of these bulbs here. And one thing I want to point out is that one way that we think about controlling robots is using just positions, putting them in the right place in space. But in this situation, we've got 2 types of really environments we're working with. We have this very hard here plywood surface, and then we have this soft sandy surface. And if the robot is using position control to kind of go and actually make contact here, when it hits that hard surface, well, it has the potential to damage the robot or to hurt the surface or to cause some other problem. So these robots are designed, as Charlotte's able to kind of move it around, to use something called impedance control, where instead of actually imposing a very solid position command to the robot, we give it like a kind of a spring and a damper and say, let's get you close, and if we can kind of now, if you hit something hard, we can adjust how stiff you might need to be in your interaction with that surface. And so in this case, it actually allows Charlotte to adjust the position a little bit. She's able to kind of move the robot. It's, yeah, exactly. You can bounce it around. It's not going to freak out. And actually, this is one of the really cool characteristics that allows us to be a collaborative robot in this way. So we love working with these for exactly this reason. So right now you see it's a fairly manual process as we're kind of going through the different stages here. But I think soon we're going to try and plant this bulb in in at least one of our very nice.
My evil laugh. Awesome. Yay! And we see the human-robot collaboration with Charlotte demonstrating finalization of the process, obviously. Yeah, okay, super, well done. This is excellent. Okay, now we can do what I wasn't allowed to do before, huh? Because I'm really liking the vision. No, seriously. So what's really important about the system is not only that the robot is something that you can sort of push around like a slightly donkey animal, so that there's a really direct also bodily interaction with that. But the super cool system is that it's this vision system. So again, we've been talking about sort of representation of data and dynamic flow, so setups where you continuously change how things are, because things change all the time, right? So can I now play? Can I put the other things in there? So we can run the vision system, or do you want to do another seedling, put another seedling in, or?
No, you can give it a go.
The education forum, and then we can have
Yeah.
more informal demonstrations of the
Yeah.
different things.
Okay, so I've been just instructed that we want to wrap up the education forum, so this is what we're going to do, and then we're going to come back here and play a little bit more for the variability. So the really interesting, I mean, this would not be interesting if it was just automation, right? Because now with that system, we could set it up, yeah, have a number of bulbs, have a predetermined configuration, so you see points 0 to 5 already here, so I can say 12 plants in a box, the box grows out, becomes a planter box, etc. Right? But that's really not what we want. But we want what that system allows us is this customization. Yeah. So we can vary the dimensionality of these plants. We can vary the beds. We can even come from these beds now and really work if we put the robot on a track. Yeah. We could have a robot garden where we lay out a track like a sort of train that moves continuously through that garden, plugging and planting and cutting and trimming and doing other things. Yeah, so over to the education.
Thank you, Dagmar. So I just wanted to kind of thank everybody for coming and listening to us talk about the different educational processes that we participate in through practice-led and practice-based research. And also that we are researchers, but we're also teachers, all of us. So this is one of our Ecologies of Care. A huge thanks to Vincent, again, wherever you are, for letting us hijack the first SHErobots Café for an education forum for UNSW Art Design, education-focused academics. And thus concludes the first one of 2024. Thanks, everyone.
Yay!
Let's give one more hand to our amazing PhD students and young researchers, and as well as the panelists and yourselves for coming. So thank you very much. I just want to point out that the SHErobots program, we have the exhibition that'll be on display till the 30th of May, and then the side program will continue to highlight TU Delft female researchers in robotics with a series of similar cafes. So I think there's another 6 of these through May. So please look on the library website and join us again for lunch and more inspiring female-led or female-created robotics research. So with that, thank you. And I think we're going to stick around a little bit and play with the robots, so you're more than welcome to join us if you don't have to run off. Thank you. And thanks to the library and the New Media Center.
Send